How is a human ever supposed to face a monster? I'm sure that if you took a moment to think of this in a non-rhetorical fashion, that you could think of plenty of options and ways to consider how to face one, but how about I tell you this? The worst way to face a monster is to see them as such, to other those who surpass your own personal doubt in order to cling to your pride, instead of working to make a pride that's actually worth clinging to. Not to get ahead of myself, with the conclusion of Haikyuu to the top, in my eyes, the major character arc for Hinata has now largely been completed, barring the eventual time skip. So let's walk through the process in the best way I can think of. Almost immediately in Season 4, Hinata forces himself into a training camp where he is unable to play, but given place to be a simple ball boy and observe. That's all. But he takes every moment in. He stays longer, works harder, which is something other players take note of. Despite not even being in the technical practices, he still takes the opportunity to see the top players playing from all angles and perspectives. He absorbs, he thinks, he watches how their muscles move. He sees the abilities each person has and how they do it. When one player gets bummed out a few episodes in, feeling picked not because of his talent, but because they were just tall, they without thought let out in earshot of Hinata that they wish he was picked instead of them, and then they feel instant guilt and regret, thinking, well, of course, Hinata feels that way too. He knows that way more than I do. It's almost rude or cruel of me to even bring that up. And then Hinata responds in a way that I genuinely didn't expect, but is totally perfect to his character. He asks in a somewhat tongue-in-cheek manner, "You mean you wish that we were both chosen, right?" He then goes on to cheer up the player, although in Hinata's own mind he is deriding him. People ask, what is the point of lifting up your competition? Well, Hinata's mindset is clear, and has become more clear since he befriended Kenma in Season 1 and even before. All of these people, they are talented, hardworking. All of these people are his challengers. But what good does it do him if they stay in the dirt? He needs them all to fly, and fly as high and as much as they can, so that he is pushed to fly even higher. He doesn't care if it makes it harder on him to win. He welcomes it, because it's passionate people coming together, expressing their abilities, the amount of love that they have for something, and if he loves volleyball that much, why wouldn't he want as many people as possible to play with and against him? He knows asking, helping, building up all of these people, taking advice is giving him an opportunity to grow, ability to learn, and that's really all that he wants, to love volleyball even deeper. This is a long change only now fully realized, and even then not noticed by people until the practice right before their first nationals game when he loses his shoes, and some people doubtfully attribute that lack of nervousness to the situation. As a viewer, you know better, of course. You've seen that part of him was finally conquered in that training camp. You see, in middle school, Hinata worked his best, and primarily through a constant crushing denial, develops a more hungry desire to play. But with the lack of people in his particular middle school, he is stunted, bringing together just a group of ragtag unpassionate friends. Still, his passion somewhat brings him together, and he practices in any conventional and many unconventional ways just in order to feel closer to that place. The national stage that he always looks up to, that shining moment in his head where his height doesn't constrain his identity like the little giant. Unfortunately for Hinata at this moment, volleyball is not a one-man team, so the endless effort of middle school fails as he enters high school. But he's able to then see Karasuno, the place that incited his inspiration, his love for volleyball, the giant on the TV, the core of his fire. His high school growth is actually represented very concisely with visual storytelling in the anime, and because I don't like to unnecessarily bog down videos with tons of unnecessary information, I'm just gonna go this route. In the first OP, it shows him spiking with his eyes closed. OP2, spiking, then opening his eyes as the moment goes, and finally OP4, showing full eyes on the ball, and not even for a true spike, but a fake out. This visual storytelling wonderfully parallels Hinata's reliance on himself and his instincts, something he had to learn, training so long alone, and slowly shows the reliance, the recognition and trust for his teammates as he goes on. Because even if Hinata has naturally crazy high instinctual reactions, that can only take him so far without the understanding for its place on the team and the ability to contribute more. Because volleyball isn't just someone tall. It isn't just a high jump, a fast reaction. It takes strategy and active attention. And it takes continual physical training to hone those natural abilities into true threats. In other words, no matter what you are quote-unquote talented at, or more naturally good at, you have to work to be good at everything else and better than everybody at all of those things too, just to have that talent mean anything. We'll get back to that in a moment though. It isn't just with his teammates that he forms bonds. Perhaps starting with Kenma, Hinata tends to score in and have these emotional, sometimes spiritual even connections with many of the players from opposing teams, inspiring them and earning levels of respect and mutual love of the sport. And something that I think people need to note is that when Hinata hits nationals, he's already won. He is no longer desperate to play a match he's afraid will be his last. He knows scores of wonderful people who have his back and are willing to play, train, compete, and grow with him all across the country. My favorite character introduced in Season 4, perhaps, and one of my favorite characters in general, is Shinsuke Kita, the captain of Inarazaki. Often characters refer to him as the adult of the court because of his level-headed, mature mindset that logically assesses things in a way a high schooler normally wouldn't understand from their adult watchers. His maturity shines light on a toxic mindset that's comically been held up as something significant or reasonable by many Haikyuu watchers and younger people, and so clearly cuts through them. This starts in episode 23, when one of the normal players on Inarazaki refers to Miya Atsumu, All Japan qualifying master setter, who is even to outclass Kageyama in many of his abilities. Next to his brother, Osamu Tsumu is almost just as crazy, and this random player offhandedly states at the bottom of the third set, simply stating, his sets are amazing. It's painful playing on the same team as him. The other player next to him then remarks about Kageyama's fantastic serves, stating that he wishes he had talent too. This last statement being about Kageyama, and with such a specific word choice, is bound to bring back Oikawa's backstory and perspective, his spite towards Kageyama, who he viewed as being naturally more gifted than him. This, writing-wise, essentially sets up Kita to directly respond to his mindset and clarify something clearly, one of his defining personality traits, as the level-headed, so-called serene king. He says, "I don't remember whenever I was asked, 'You're not a starter, so isn't it hard to have a genius player who's younger than you on the same team?' Well, I'm not sure what qualifies a genius, but I understand what they were trying to say. There happen to be a lot of people who think that someone like Tsumu was just naturally born a talented player. But everything I do every day on a scale of 1 to 10, guys like Tsumu do on a scale of 1 to 20, or a more effective 10, or a denser 10, and sometimes instead of 10 they try A to Z. That's what goes through their heads. Even if they mess up sometimes, or if they're hated by strangers or cast out, even if they completely ignore something that we would consider very important, they just have to do it. Even if they start coughing up blood. They're the guys who want to keep running. There are plenty of guys in this world that we're no match for, and it's natural to find people like that amazing. I think being able to dive into things head first is a talent in and of itself. And it doesn't matter what you call them. And it's not like genius is even an insult, but if you're thinking they're geniuses from the start, that just means you've lost before you've even had a match with them. And it's rude. Kita then apologizes for the rant and understands that they didn't mean any harm by it, but that's probably the most clearly the writer has ever shown their hand in Haikyuu. This isn't some campy, unrealistic visual novel where people are either born with talent or not. Truth is, some people get worse scores of luck and talent than others, sure. But that absolute density for types of talent? Where is the line you draw before you realize you're just making excuses? No matter what self-pitying justification Oikawa gives, doesn't change the fact that the moment Aoba Josai lost is because he failed a receive as a 6-foot-tall guy, way above the Japan average. Something that is a talent and something Hinata was shown earlier in the season to look up to himself. He, as a 6-foot person, misses a receive from a 5'3" shrimp like Hinata. And it was close, too. Hinata's instincts wouldn't have got him that far alone with his height disadvantage and general lack of experience. It was the countless hours of active, dense growth. Not just 1 to 10, 1 to 10 as dense as possible. He was never asking, well, why can't I get better? But how can I get better? His time was never wasted trying to create a pseudo-intellectual excuse about how he was doomed to fail and given an unfair lot, and instead worked to understand the inherent pros and cons in his opponents and learning to read how to react to them. Earlier in the game with Inarazaki, the coach very notably talks about not clinging to the past, and instead clinging to the moment now, because even the best players in the world, talent-wise, if they always play the same, are eventually going to get surpassed. It's a constant match of reading, adapting, and not letting your ego consume you when you feel like you're on the top, because you'll never be on the top as long as you think that. Kageyama is notably shorter than Oikawa for one thing, but he is naturally better at reading the court. However, he is also bad at communicating and getting along with others, something that Oikawa has in spades. There is no all beats one trump card in volleyball or life, and pretending the result of said position is void of your own decisions is, as Kita said, admitting defeat before the game has even begun. The only way that you will know your limit, the limit of your collective positive and negative attributes or quote-unquote talents, is to push them to the limit. That being said, it requires countless time and difficult dedication. It makes sense to scoff and wonder if that level of dedication is even worth it. But to feel the wall of your dedication slowing you and slowly feeling it isn't worth it isn't a limitation of body or mind, it's will. Then again, Kita proposes that that may be a talent in and of itself. Talent, the word, in many aspects, especially in Haikyuu, is a vague excuse explanation term, too loosely defined to properly describe real people in the real world much of the time it's used, and often neglects or refuses to acknowledge the blood, sweat, and tears that actually got them there. In Kita's words, it's rude. It says, I worked harder than you, I deserve the top, without ever possibly knowing or grasping the dedication of the others that you failed to see. If Kageyama and Hinata didn't work to overcome their weaknesses constantly, didn't understand how their strengths could adapt, and didn't actively work against their natural instincts to improve them, they would have been nothing. They wouldn't have held even the slightest challenge to Aoba Josai or any of their future matches. Thrown into a vague river of this strange term of wasted potential. Yet, in this match, Hinata receives, and he receives well. He does something that he was horrible at starting in the show, something he has no aptitude or talent for beyond, once again, these nice instincts that sometimes work out. Something that he's observed the best players do, and performed countless times in practice matches, and intense moments. He grows, truly becoming a leader. This moment, like his spike, is something that Suki calls back to Season 3 for his moment whenever he felt that he finally loved volleyball. That moment he fell a layer deeper, and Suki acknowledges that even a person like Hinata, who loves so purely this sport that brought him a passion and friends, can still fall even deeper in love with the game. This moment deeper, this moment of the aroundedness that make Hinata an all-around good asset to the team with no caveats, is what single-handedly brings his teammates' spirits back from the darkness and gives them the wherewithal to push forward. And that is the birth of a monster, the birth of a leader. Leadership is a funny thing. Socrates put together the idea of a leader that I think has stood the test of time and is often called back to even today, even if the people saying it don't know where the origins come from. It's that old adage that those who seek leadership aren't actually fitting of that role. Because realistically, who would want the responsibility, the stress and pressure? No. This theorizes that those people who would pretend to want something almost purely negative would see the power gained along with these pressures as the primary part, and that the important parts of leadership, the ones that are negative, were just an afterthought. Instead, it is said that those who make great leaders are those who say, give me the opportunity, give me the chance to prove myself, give me the skills, the place to hone myself, give me the equipment, but most crucially, give me the chance. It's not those who desperately look for fans or high social position from what they do, but look for answers to problems they feel they can solve. Before those people know it, they've become a leader. The title is unimportant when the role is filled. So that's the point that Hinata finally achieves after the Inarazaki game. A gradual change and a reinforcement of his already positive, passionate, and love-filled mentality that stemmed from the moment he saw the little giant on the stage, and now ends with the moment he became one. A mentality that, while he was born with some disadvantages, like his extremely short height compared to pretty much anybody in the volleyball scene, he has his advantages too. And it's his role to find and sharpen those stronger bits, while compensating for the weaker ones, carving a path toward his happiness. While certainly giving off an intense aura several times through the series, he was not born a monster. Viewing him as a monster is only a way that players cope with their doubt and fear. And he didn't become a monster either. It was a process, a calculated, continual, consistent, admirable effort. This is just the result of his actions, his routine, and who every day he continues to choose to be. And that's something admirable. That's something that I can look up to and be inspired by when I watch Haikyuu. In simple summary, for Persona fans, Oikawa is basically just Adachi, but if he was a hot high school boy. I don't upload often, so if you happen to find yourself watching my videos, please subscribe and comment. It always helps those few videos I do upload perform much better. And I'm pretty dang good at responding to comments, if I do say so, considering my size. I respond to more than a few hundred comments per video. If you wish to help me in this January AdSense drought, please consider helping my Patreon like Whizbang2093, Friendly Neighbor, My Name is Klein, Frillneck Lizard, CJ, Sam Lloyd, Jose Ramirez, and all of my other patrons and Twitch supporters. Also, follow my Twitter. Do it. Do it, please. Okay. See you all soon.